Cool. So this is the second of our series. So we started this off last week. I see a lot of people are returning visitors, and I'm so glad to see you on with us. We will be doing these ongoing. So thank you for joining us on your Thursday morning. Some technical announcements to just get us started for the day. You have been muted and your video turned off, just because we do anticipate quite a few people joining us, and we want to make sure that we can keep focused on our presenters for today. So if you are joining by phone and by audio, by phone and by computer, try to sync them up if you can. I think I was trying to do that right before, and that might have been the reason you couldn't hear me, so I apologize for that. Yes, if you are having technical issues, please do let us know in the chat. This is your CLP team today, the same from last time and weeks going forward. We have Naomi Castro, Sherry Sojai, and Eder Flores, and myself, Amanda Isa. I will be helping facilitate today's webinar, and hope you guys are looking forward to it. To give you a little bit of an overview as to what our webinars are about, can we go back a slide? Thank you. We'll be discussing different topics that are of issue at this moment, and probably issues that we've been considering for some time. So we're going to talk about access, online platforms, communication, support services, just everything that's out there, what resources can help us with this during these times, how do we turn our hand-to-hand and physical products into something that's online so that we can reach students and not necessarily have to get, let's say, a paper enrollment form signed. So we're going to discuss that today. We're really looking forward to it. These webinars are 1 hour every Thursday. We share everything we have from this webinar with the field. So our slides, video, links, resources, you will all get a follow-up email with that information. If you did miss last week's, or you wanted to just check it out again, on the Career Ladders website, you will find our page on problem solving for moving dual enrollment online. We have links to our recording, the presentation, resources, and more. Hope you can check it out. We want to go over a little bit of norms for today's webinar. I love seeing the chat blow up right now. It's so cool. Everyone's saying good morning from Chaffey and good morning from Foothill. It's wonderful to see all the colleges joining us. For the rest of this webinar, we're going to kind of reserve that. We're going to reserve that chat for questions, for ideas, and for technology issues. So if you do have a question for one of our college presenters, please put their college name and then your question, so we know how to direct the questions or to whom we should direct them. If you have a general question you just wanted to ask and put it out in the field, please write general and then the question following. The same goes for if you have an idea or a resource, or you have a solution that you came across you really want to share, please put idea and then your comment. And lastly, if you're having any sort of technical issue, please write tech, what the issue is, and we will message you privately. So thank you for following that norm for the rest of the webinar. And with that, we're going to move into a few updates from the field. So on our next slide, we have updates that we shared with the field last week. So these were just changes in terms of student withdrawal regulations. We discussed online education initiatives. We talked about how hard to convert classes to an online platform. So these were updates we shared with you all last week. For this week, we have some new updates as well. One being is that there's been a temporary suspension of the pass, no pass regulation. So on this next slide, you will see that the 30% window of the course has actually that's been suspended for the time being. So that students who do need to select a pass or no pass course grading indication are still able to do that. There has also been a lot of information shared about technology resources for you to use in your classrooms with your students and in different instructional needs. There is Link Systems that provides NetTutor, which is a way of providing online tutoring for students in a variety of subjects. This is available, I believe, at little to no cost for the colleges. Cranium Cafe, which seems to be a really popular one right now. That's a counseling source for a counseling platform for people to use to support students through this time to ensure that they're still getting the different needs that they may have. And then we discuss CTE courses or science courses like virtual, or we discuss the kinds of classes that need labs and you got to do something. So Labster has a source. It's a virtual lab platform that supports science-related disciplines. And you can go in there and check out the different options you have for your courses. These technology resources and more are provided in more detail on the Chancellor's Office website in terms of how colleges can get access. There is also the Next Gen Web Solutions, which is a way of turning your paper forms into an online platform available at no cost to the colleges. There is a product webinar today at 3 p.m. and another one tomorrow. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about what Next Gen can offer, you can check those webinars out. In the chat box, there will be links to those registrations. So we're given lots of information. Hopefully this is helpful to you all. I highly encourage you all to check out the Chancellor's website if you haven't already. On that top red bar, there is Find Facts and Resources. If you click on that, it'll take you to another page where you can see the current updates from the Chancellor's office on the next slide, where it says, and then check out that arrow, the arrow where it says subscribe. You can send an email there and get information about special updates that will help you in your work. So hopefully you guys have a chance to check it out. Career Ladders Project also has a one-pager that we put out last week, and we'll reshare that again, and we'll be putting it in our chat. So you'll find lots of helpful links in the chat box today. And this is also a quick guide to get you to some online tools and other resources during these times. So I just wanted to introduce our two presenters for today. We have two colleges. We have Foothill College. Josh Pelletier will be joining us, Supervisor of Student Outreach and CTE Transition. We also have from Chaffey College, Matthew Morin, Joe Vallejo, and Nabil Torres, Admissions and Records and Intersegmental Partnerships. So these are our two presenters for today. We are going to start things off with Foothill College's Josh Pelletier. So Josh, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk with all of you about what Foothill College is doing right now to address working from home and providing virtual instruction and online instruction for dual enrollment students. So I put a few slides together, and one thing I want to point out to begin with is that Foothill College is not in a unique situation, but Foothill, De Anza, and I believe it's Lake Tahoe Community College are three community colleges that are on a quarter system. So we are about to start a new term. It was going to start on April 6th, but we've pushed it back to April 13th. One of the main reasons for this is to provide the faculty with a flex week so that they can do any training that they need to do to prepare for virtual and online instruction. So that's the first bullet point, and I wanted to point that out because we're in a relatively small group of colleges right now that are having to prepare for a spring term right now. I think it's only 3 out of the community college system. So I want to address what we're doing because I think it would be useful for other colleges to know how we are trying to capture, especially dual enrollment and special admit forms in advance of a spring term that's starting very quickly. So the first thing that I put in the bullet point here is a hyperlink to what is currently a draft of a YouTube application support video. So I'm supervising a wonderful team of people who are putting together supports for our high school students. And one of them is a YouTube application video, and I'm not sure if I can link to that. But you get the general idea. There's a person who is walking a student through the OpenCCC application and then actually completes the application on their screen to show a student what that's going to look like. And right now, I think that video is about 30 minutes, and we're going to need to provide timestamps and maybe a shorter version. We also need to caption, provide a Spanish language version. So there's a lot of considerations, but we're doing everything that we can at the moment to at least provide the supports that students would need to complete the application. But that just gets them through part of the process of becoming a dual enrollment student. The other part, as we all know, is the special admit form. So I should mention that Foothill had been working on a Smartsheet version of a dual enrollment form for a little while, and we hadn't really been intending to launch it until fall of 2020. But because of the shelter in place and the orders for going to virtual and online instruction, we felt that we didn't have the luxury of waiting until the fall and doing a small test group. And we just went ahead and made the form go live on March 24th. So it's only been live for about a week now. But what I can tell you is that I checked in with the form this morning, and we had 217 special admit students complete that form since March 24th. We had 45 students fill out the form since yesterday. So students are definitely using it. And I don't know if it's possible for the person controlling the slides to click on the hyperlink for the Smartsheet electronic form. Would love to show people what that looks like if that's possible. So it's going to hyperlink to our dual enrollment website. And if you clear out the red banner there, you should be able to scroll down. And you'll see under step 2, it says submit special admit form to enroll. If someone could click on that and then follow the hyperlink, it'll show everyone what the form looks like. So it's under step 2 for how to enroll.
Maybe you need to remove the red banner across the.
There's a gold X on the bottom right of the red banner. You can select that.
Thank you, Janie. I recognize that voice.
Just click bottom right on the gold X.
It's probably under the images. Minimize the images. There you go.
You might have a toolbar covering the bottom part of your screen, but there's a little gold X in the bottom right corner that's keeping that banner there a little bit further down.
You're getting warmer.
Warmer.
Suffice to say, it's an electronic copy of what we all know to be a special admit form. Students can fill in the fields that they need to. On a few of the other slides that I put together, I put some screenshots together of what I think people will be more interested in, which is what the back end of the application looks like for the people that are sorting through them and processing the forms. So we've replaced our PDF special admit form with a Smartsheet electronic version of it. And like I said, students just fill it in like they would a fillable PDF. There's an option for them to upload AP scores if they need supporting documents. And if you go to the next slide, I believe I put in a workflow so people can understand. There it is. So this is how the electronic special admit form works. A student is going to complete it online, and as soon as they submit the form online, it's going to split into 2 forms virtually. One copy of the form is going to be sent by email to a high school administrator who's been designated, and one version of the form is going to go to a parent or guardian so that they can type in their consent by email. And then that updates our Smartsheet and lets us know that the high school administrator has given their consent for the student to enroll in a college class, and that the parent or guardian has given their consent too. Once that's done, so once the student's completed the form and it's gotten the appropriate signatures, on our Smartsheet spreadsheet, the line highlights yellow and lets us know that the student can be enrolled. So if you move to the next slide, I put an image in there to show you what that looks like. And I was careful to not show any sensitive information. So rather than sign you in and show you what the whole thing looks like, which I think would be really useful, I just wanted to show you as generally as possible without exposing student information, what Smartsheets looks like for the people that need to process the forms. So as I mentioned, a completed form is a yellow line there. So any of the lines that you see highlighted yellow mean that it's okay to be processed. In the left image, if you see processed by and the process date, that means a person's actually processed the enrollment. And so rather than doing this all by paper now, we are simply using this electronic spreadsheet to manage the special admit course registration process after students have moved through the application process. So this has been our solution to getting signatures and getting students enrolled. And like I mentioned, since March 24th, we've had 217 students complete this form, which from last year, I think is like a 25% increase in special admit students applying to Foothill College and registering for classes. I have one more slide. And I'm hoping that these can just be resources for people. But I wanted to share that Foothill College has created a virtual campus. So if people have questions about what's happening at Foothill beyond, let's say, the smart sheets that I'm talking about, there are a lot of useful links. So I hope that that link can be shared with people. Foothill has also done a lot of work to put together an instructional continuity plan. And I thought that would be valuable to share as well. And then I also want to mention that one of the things our college is doing is holding daily staff and faculty briefings with the college president. And I put a link there too, because the videos are being archived and captioned for anybody who wants to watch them. I do think they could be valuable to other colleges. And I don't think the link is available to share outside of our staff and faculty circles. But just wanted to mention, as a practice, Foothill College is holding these daily briefings to keep everybody informed about what's happening. So I'm gonna stop and start taking questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Josh. That was really helpful. You do have the links to everything that was shared. So if I see the action going on in the chat, you guys can check it out if you'd like. So we have quite a few questions. I'm going to just kind of scatter around and see, just to help out with the folks out there. So first question was like, how did you find out about Smartsheet?
Yeah, I figured this would be a question. And so I was not part of the college's decision to purchase the Smartsheets license. So we have an instructional support coordinator. Her name is Kalea Harris, and she works for the executive vice president of the college, Christy Lyle. So they purchased the subscription to Smartsheets, and Kalea has been creating Smartsheets like a person possessed for just about every department on campus right now. So Foothill is very grateful for the work that Kalea has been doing. But I wasn't involved in the decision to use Smartsheets as opposed to some other piece of software.
Okay. We also have a question about the verification of electronic signatures.
Yeah.
Does Smartsheets offer that?
I'm not sure whether it offers the verification of electronic signatures. What we're doing though, as dual enrollment coordinators, is that we're reaching out to the high schools. So if I was able to show you the form that students fill out, what we've done is we've created a drop-down menu for all of the high schools that we know of that dual enrollment students are typically coming to Foothill from. We already identified the administrator from that high school. And when the form is sent, we've already designated the administrator there. And we've verified that administrator personally by reaching out to that person and ensuring that they're going to be okay to sign the forms when they come to them. Because certain school sites, they might see 30 to 50 students in a day. So we want to make sure, first of all, they're not surprised by the influx of emails and that they are, in fact, the administrator of that school. So we're doing a verification. Whether Smartsheets has that feature or not, I can't speak to.
Okay. And then along the lines of your workflow, we have a question about what platform you are using for the document/workflow. Yeah, so what platform are you using other than, I guess I'm guessing this is other than Smartsheet. I don't know if you can add to that.
So we're mainly just using Smartsheets to organize the information. Our enrollment system is Banner. So the information that we're collecting on Smartsheets is accessible by, I want to say, 5 or 6 different people who are processing the enrollment. We all coordinate with each other, and that's actually going really well to make sure that students are being enrolled. And then that information goes into Banner. And Banner has a function called Banner Document Management that allows us to then upload each of the line entries as its own PDF to support the enrollment. Because I know that traditionally you need to put in some kind of scanned in paper support for a special admin enrollment. So you can actually produce that from a Smartsheet and then upload it to each individual student enrollment entry.
Awesome.
So we're figuring that out too. But like I said, we weren't planning to do this until the fall. We just had, our hand was forced because we have a spring term coming up. So some of these hurdles we're identifying as we run the race, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, this is a great example of a college who is working towards a change later down the line, and given everything that's happening, having to just kind of like just jump on it real quickly and get it moving. So it's definitely been from what I've shared, what Josh has shared with me, it's been a lot of like learning and moving it forward real quickly. And so it's been great to see just how many students are also accessing that. So along the lines of like, you know, using this for dual enrollment students, there is a question out there about, are you using this process for adult education learners as well?
It could, so I know that under new legislation, some adult education students actually do qualify to apply as special admit students, so they could absolutely use the form in that way. We have an adult education coordinator, Janie Garcia, who's actually on the call right now, and we can absolutely share this information with our adult education partners, and I'm sure we will as soon as possible to make sure that adult education students can use the form if they need to. Like I said, it's only been about a week, and we're trying to communicate with everybody. But yeah, that should definitely be in the next wave of outreach that we do to let people know about the form. Right now, we've just been trying to identify all of our high school partners to make sure that the enrollments are valid and that the students are getting processed, because that's the major influx right now. It's high school students and a surprising number of middle school students who we can't admit as special admit students who are trying to get credit classes right now.
Man. They're ready to get ahead, those middle schoolers. Well, so speaking about student enrollment, there's another question here on how do you control the class maximum? So I'm assuming what this question is, how do you handle enrollment numbers for class max? And so I'm assuming this is because the students are completing that online form. What happens if the numbers go over, I guess is the question. How are you managing the number of students who are requesting certain classes?
So far, to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't been an issue. So if the class max needs to be adjusted, that's a decision for a dean or an AVP. We would communicate with the dean if we were noticing the classes were filling up too quickly, but we do have the ability to put students onto wait lists. So in the event that we're hitting up against the maximum seat count, our practice is just to put the student on the wait list and let them know that they're on the wait list. And then as we're noticing trends, communicating with deans to let them know they might need to open new classes, because that could be the solution to the issue, is to open a few new sections.
Wow. So I know that there's so many more questions for Foothill, and we are going to come back and revisit as much as we can. We are just going to move on to our next team for now, and we'll come back to these questions. I want to thank Josh so much for sharing the work of Foothill. I do encourage everyone to check out those links. They are incredible, the things that are being offered right now. So please do check those out. So now we have from Chaffey College. I'm going to pass that on over to the team. I think we're just in the process of unmuting, perhaps. So we have Matthew, Joe, and Nabil. Hey, welcome.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew Morin, and I'm the Director of Intersegmental Partnerships at Chaffey College. And I'm joined today by Joe Vallejo and Nabil Torres. Nabil is from Admissions and Records, and Joe is in counseling. And I just wanted to speak briefly from the management perspective. It was great hearing about what Josh is doing, because I think you'll see a lot of similarities in the workflows of what we've created as well. And it seems like the whole system is just rushing to try to move this online, and so it's an exciting time. But in terms of getting that work done from the management perspective, one of the things that we've found, and I'm just sort of going to share my troubleshooting. We've been doing an online form and registration with high school students since this fall. And from the manager's perspective, I found that the most useful tool really to getting things off the ground is to identify one person who can solely focus on that work. And ideally that person is a rock star. In this case, it's Joe. And then also a second person who can kind of accompany to build a little bit of a team, so that you as the manager can let that project fly and just be a guide on the side. Ideally, those people are smart, they're creative, they also have the skill set adapted to the technology solutions that are needed. And then finally, that you as a manager are bracketing off the time for those individuals to make sure that they can just focus on that and they're not interrupted by other duties. The other piece, I think, is coordination, making sure that the manager, or in my case, I found I constantly needed to move roadblocks out of the way so that this team could kind of keep moving forward. And those roadblocks have a lot to do with the intersections at the policy level. I think a lot of times institutions will try to pump the brakes on creating a digital solution because there's a sense that maybe like policy deems it's not appropriate for signatures to be digital as opposed to handwritten, when in fact there really aren't many policy concerns there. And so I think the policy perspective of like, we learn what the policy is, we understand, we comply. I think that comply piece, a lot of times, at least I found it useful rather than thinking of like, how do we comply to policy, but instead, how do we imagine about what the policy allows us to do that we're not currently doing? In terms of the groups that we coordinate with, and that I found it useful to be coordinating with about policy to sort of clear these roadblocks, definitely starting with leadership and then admissions and records, because they're really bound to a lot of the regulations of internal auditing and external auditing, and then our internal auditors, and kind of coordinating amongst those stakeholders to make sure that things could move out of the way so that our rock stars can build and create the technology solutions that will be adaptable for the situation. And then with regard to technology, I think at least, you know, what we found is a lot of traction around focusing on an IT solution that didn't necessarily always need IT. So what can we build in-house, doing a do-it-yourself attitude, and then using IT sparingly for only what's essential. And then finally, just really like drilling down on processes, understanding how every single group on campus and then off campus with our K-12 districts process students, work through their own internal challenges, in order to kind of coordinate that so that the team of individuals who are working on creating the electronic form just don't hit as many roadblocks as they otherwise would without that kind of coordination from the manager. So I'm going to pass it off to the rock stars, and that heart there really speaks to the human element of all of this, which is in order to really drill down on processes and do this coordination effort, it's highly relational. So a lot of face-to-face time, a lot of Zoom meetings, and trying to keep a sense of urgency in the mix along the way. So here's Joe, and Joe did the lion's share of the work creating the form. So I want to give him the stage.
We're going to just go back one. Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Vallejo. I'm a part-time counselor at Chaffey College within the Dual Enrollment program. And so Chaffey College was facing the paper process kind of challenges, and that's why we decided to go to the online form process that we currently have. And so what we're seeing, or why we decided to go that way, is because of all the common issues that we encountered is that we were receiving incomplete forms, which required a lot of work on our staff members to search in our SIS system, to have them send forms back to students, parents in high schools, to contact the students, explain the errors. So there was a lot of time just trying to troubleshoot what was going on and what the students needed. So that's where we went ahead and we decided to try and streamline this process and figure out what can we do to help the students and the schools, which are our partners in this process, right? So our solution was, was Formstack. So Formstack is a platform online form program. Formstack workflows is what allows us to send that to, very much like Foothill College, send that to the high school designee, whoever that might be. So what this allows us to do is, one, it limits the amount of driving that we have to do to pick up these forms for our high school partnership classes that are taught at the high school. It requires the student to do the application. So we're finding, or the California Community College's application. So we're finding that students were not completing the application before submitting the form because they maybe got it from a friend that wanted them to take the class with them, right? So it's really getting and streamlining that process for them. It also helped because it started at the student level, was pushed to the high school designee, and then it was finally, once everything was completed on both ends, then delivered to Chaffey College. But along those ways, we could track how the form was doing and whose hands it was in. And then with this, it allows for more data collection because now you could push out the information that's received through Formstack via a CSV file, an Excel file. It also has a analytics component within it. So it already does that for you if you want a quick view. Reduce A&R lines, and then also just saved around roughly conservative about $30,000 in just all the people managing those papers as well. So that's what our decision was. So currently Chaffey College has a fully online dual enrollment process. And so we use the online e-agreement, and that's through Formstack. And then the high school students submit their transcripts one time only at Chaffey College, and that's to verify that they are in high school. They complete our dual enrollment orientation through Comevo. So some of you might be familiar with that. And then we also provide online counseling to students as well through Cranium Cafe. So this is a screenshot of the students portion. So the students portion has about 6 parts. They have the student information portion. They have a transportation information portion. That's the Omnitrans here in our area. Recommended courses. So they list what classes they would like to take. They have the student agreement, the waiver of liability, and then the emergency contact information. So that's all throughout this form. This is just a screenshot of the first part of it, but there are multiple layers within this form. So we gather all that information that's necessary for us to process them. So once the student has completed this, they'll go ahead and submit it, and then they'll have, it'll be shot over to the designees at those high schools. So very much again, like Foothill College, we've already identified who those high school designees are. So it gets sent to them via email. They'll get an email notification, and then they'll be prompted to log into Formstack, which is just a click in that email that they received. And then they'll go ahead and complete the forms. It does keep track for the high school designee of all the students that have not been completed. So they'll be able to go ahead and verify who it is through just moving through that one single email if needed to be. Let's see. All right. So then I'm going to hand it over to my other rock star in this process. It's Nabil. So Nabil, it is all yours, my friend.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nabil, and I work in the Admissions and Records Department at Chaffey. So in this slide, we can see a bunch of different screens. So these screens are the ones that I use to enroll students. So there's a lot of them. It's very time consuming. So the screens that we use is a perk to notate that we receive the student's information or packet or paperwork. SDRK, we receive their transcripts, we assign them a registration date, and we cohort the student. So STPE is a screen for our students who come into our office and turn in their paperwork versus me getting the paperwork from our high school partnership office. So these students, they come on their own, and in order for them to be able to self-register at home, we input their courses in this screen. So we'll put the term that they are turning the form in for, and then the courses that they were approved for. Again, this allows them to go home on their registration date to register for these classes themselves via their student portal. In the next slide, I can show you as soon as, yeah, there we go. So for this, this is mostly our process for when we get courses or students from our high school partnership program. We get the form, and then what IT has done, or we've been working with IT with, to create a way where we can batch register them or batch notate their account so that I'm not doing it individually for each student. So we create a save list, and then from that save list, we create a, I guess, course so that we can register everyone in that save list into that course. So in the next slide, we have it circled where it's the process of how we set up the section block. And then this just allows us to register the students all at once versus me doing it individually. This has been I've only tried it once because it's fairly new, but it's been super helpful in getting all the students registered on time versus me taking weeks to register the students. And yeah. Matt, I don't know if you have any closing remarks.
I think there's another slide there.
Yes, there is. There's one that circles the, there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
That section.
So that shows, yeah, that shows the batch registration roadmap. So, so in short, just to kind of summarize, when students complete the online form, the online agreement form or the special admit form, after that piece is completed, there's kind of two choices. One is they can register at home if it's a class that's not taught on, you know, now these days, that's not structured enrollment through a high school campus. Or if it is structured through a high school campus and it's one of the courses that our dual enrollment program facilitates in coordination with the 19 high schools, now all of those forms can be batch registered into the SIS directly without Nabil having to input that data piecemeal manually. And that concludes our presentation.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. We do have questions or pop in here and there. We just have some clarifying questions too. Maybe we can just review real quickly. We had a question about if you use Banner or not, and Joe let us all know that you use DataTail Colleague to manage the system. There are questions then about, you were talking about batch enrollment for the high school students. So when the signatures are needed from the high school partners, do they receive individual emails each time a student completes the form, or is it like all in one? Here are all the students who completed this form.
Yeah, great question. I'll answer that one. So they do get individual emails. So what I've done for my high school partners is I've created a tutorial on how to create an inbox rule. So then that way they go ahead and route them directly to that inbox folder. So then they don't get their inbox overloaded, because as educators, we get emails about everything. So that was just something that we had done to help them. But yes, they do get individual emails for every student.
Oh man, you want to come organize my inbox? I'm kidding.
I also have to add to that, because this spring, moving into the spring, we enrolled around 300 students, I think, using this. We also still use the paper form, but now we'll be going obviously entirely electronic. But because of that, the one designee who is built into the workflow form as the designee attached to that high school, the high schools have asked that they add more names to that list, and because they don't want it all falling on one person. And so we're still trying to figure out how does the logic in the form, how can we functionalize the logic in that form to make that possible?
Okay.
There was a question about cost, I see. We just moved to an enterprise license before the college was operating on individual department licenses. And then we just got an enterprise license, which I do not know that information. I'm trying to find it. Matt, do you happen to know?
Yeah, so so we started, it was just, you know, again, like DIY, used some Title V funds to get up and running with a $6,000 contract with Formstack workflows that got us to the scale of what we needed for around 1,000 high school students. And then we wanted to use that as proof of concept. But because of the pandemic, there's been a lot of red tape moved out of the way, and an institutional move to, you know, be able to invest in electronic solutions. So the institution purchased an enterprise license for Formstack last week, and I believe that was around $25,000. And that'll be used now for the entire campus. So they folded in a number of other Formstack accounts that are spread out across the campus into ours, because we were using it the most.
Yeah, I'm looking at our invoice right now and it looks like it's just under 20,000.
So then there was a question that was asked about the number of dual enrollment students you have. I think you just mentioned 300 in the past fall. Is that currently around the number of students that you that have dual enrollment at your site?
Those were actually the ones that we were piloting with the online form. We didn't want to go globally with the online form because of obvious reasons. But we have around 1,900 now a year. So that's our full enrollment. And then of that, about 550 to 600 are the ones that are structured through our high schools.
Excellent. There was a lot of excitement around your dual enrollment orientation. I think it's a video that you were discussing. People were wondering if they would be able to get access to that, and I'm trying to follow the chat, but it's moving so quickly. So I wasn't sure if we'd be able to get that shared with everyone.
I think I'm gonna have to follow up with the Dean of Counseling for that one, because it is a counseling purview. So I'll go ahead and follow up with her and see how we could get that out to share with others. But it is Comevo is the platform. So then that one, it's a walkthrough orientation where the student reads and watches videos and then kind of progresses to complete that orientation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know right now we're all looking for different examples and resources to help us build the program. So thank you for doing that. There was a question I meant to ask a bit sooner when you discussed the number of dual enrollment students. There was a question about what your FTES is at Chaffey College, just to kind of give a big picture idea.
I give that one to Matt. Let's see.
You're muted, Matt.
A few times.
All right, so we have around 30,000 students total, and I actually don't know our total institutional FTES. So, but I can look that up really quickly. But it's public on Datamart. But that gives you an idea of the scale. So we're a little bit smaller than Mount Sac in terms of how large we are.
And then I have one more question for the Chaffey team, and then we're going to go to just some open general questions. So there was a question about, are students getting application support while they are completing this online form, or is this done entirely on their own?
So one of the goals for me and the other dual enrollment counselors, and they're on this meeting, so it's a reminder of a challenge that we kind of started with each other, is just to push each other and try and create access for students. So one of those is creating a application video similar to what Foothill is going to do. We've done them before. We're just going to make it a little bit more professional looking, because as Matt had said, it's more DIY kind of stuff in the past. So we're just going to clean it up, make sure that it looks more professional. And then we're going to embed also with that video, host workshops through Zoom in order to provide those to each schools, because normally that right now we would be going and having application workshops at each school, but because of the current situation, we're going to go ahead and facilitate those online for each school and set dates for those via Zoom.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chaffey College and Foothill College, for sharing information and questions. I'm going to keep you on because we're still getting questions that people would love to have your insights on. So we're moving into just some general questions. This is just a reoccurring question, and I'd love to hear what both teams went through with this process. So in terms of electronic signatures, how did that become allowable at your sites, or what was any hurdle that you had to overcome? Folks are saying that their departments are saying that they need to have the wet signature. So what can you tell us a little bit? Maybe we'll start with Matthew and then Josh.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to that policy thing in terms of the intersections and roadblocks that we encounter, and the role of managers in coordinating across departments and being really proactive about face-to-face meetings, because a lot of these policy barriers aren't really barriers, they're more like norms. You won't find anything in ed code that says there needs to be a wet signature. You know, really what auditors are looking for is something that's verifiable, and a wet signature actually is less verifiable than a K-12 email. I mean, an email address on a secure email platform is much more verifiable than a signature that, you know, A&R is not checking every single signature with like a handwriting expert to make sure that that high school student didn't sign off for their parents and the counselor.
Be hard to say it any better than that myself. I mean, we had very similar discussions, but at Foothill, it was it was an administrative decision to greenlight this process. So I agree, these are norms and they're not laws. So it was the college collectively making a decision to move ahead with this process.
If I could also just add to that, like many colleges, I think people feel powerless to make suggestions if it is something that exists at the policy or the leadership level. And, you know, often there is a lot of room to do the research at the middle management level about policy and bring clarity to the issue, because, you know, VPs and presidents, you know, would prefer solutions that are easier than having to do that work on their own. So providing the whole picture and being able, especially with the support of your internal auditor, that's like key, your internal auditor, and then stuff will fly.
I just would like to add, this is Janie Garcia from Foothill College, that one, you know, in agreement with both Josh and our last commenter, sorry, I'm horrible with names. It's lovely working with Foothill College because while, of course, you know, we need to put at the forefront compliance with education code and other, you know, legalities, equity is always at the forefront of what we're trying to work toward for our students and for our staff. And so definitely in terms of accessibility, especially in a trying time like this, it's just a wonderful experience to work with a college who's so dedicated to making sure all things are accessible for all students.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. There is a small technical question that we asked Chaffey College around cost, but the question was also coming up about Smartsheet for Josh. So roughly, if you know that, what the estimate of the cost would be to use something like Smartsheet.
That I don't know. Like I said, the college has been moving to taking a lot of forms that were PDF and migrating them all over to Smartsheets. So I'm not sure what level of subscription the college purchased. That wasn't something that came across my desk. I was just fortunate enough to work for people that got it and said, hey, we've got it, we're using it, let's make it happen. So.
That's awesome. That definitely helps. I highly encourage those who are wondering these questions and trying to figure out what platform to use to get in touch with folks at their college to see perhaps there is something already moving and shaking, and maybe we can get it moving a little faster. So highly encourage you to talk to your IT departments and others. So I'm going to go back to some more questions. We have one around AB 30. So the revised addition to the AB 288 legislation about all things dual enrollment, but specifically around the enrollment form. So how has this new change connected to your electronic form system? Is there any thought process that went into that? Anything you can share about the electronic forms being connected to AB 30?
I can say that when we moved from the PDF form to the electronic form, we vastly expanded the number of classes that students could put on their education plan, because really AB 30 is allowing for a whole year's worth of classes to be listed on one form. That's my understanding, at least. So we went from giving students really like a primary class, a secondary class, and an alternate, to then having 12, I believe it's 12 options, and then every single quarter to select as well. So they could put a whole year's worth of classes on there, which isn't to say that they'd be able to find them in the schedule, because our schedules come out quarterly. But if they wanted to, especially for high school students in a CCAP, they could list off their entire year's worth of classes on the form, and we would just have to apply the CRN later once we knew what it was. But that was a change once we went to the electronic form.
Thank you.
I would also
Any
just
comments
add
from that? Yeah.
Yeah, that just that AB 30 in the language, there's a really an impetus towards streamlining. And so it's clear that the legislators recognize that that institutions had definitely interpreted ed code in such a way that they were creating a lot more red tape than they needed to. And AB 30 is on the face of it really clearly suggesting to institutions that if you see roads to cut red tape, do so.
Great, thank you. So we are getting lots of questions around the slides and resources, and I just want to repeat that we will be sharing all that right after this webinar. You'll get the links to everything that we shared here today. There are some questions around the EW that was discussed last week. So if anyone would like to share a little bit there. So the question is, are the EW indication automatic after student withdrawals, or is dropped by an instructor, or do they need to file, quote, paperwork? But given the fact that we are going paperless right now, has anyone come across the issue of the EW given these changes for any dual enrollment?
Yeah, so I think we're probably all grappling with this simultaneously. And so so there will be a petition that students can file if the circumstances have proved to impede their progress. And in order to get the EW, it won't be granted automatically. But I think what we all, if we're working with high school students, need to keep in mind, and in our area, what we'll have to really focus on is making sure we're diligent stewards of the student experience, because they're unlikely to be seeking out those types of forms on their own. Like, we're really going to have to do a lot of proactive work to make sure that they have access to those forms, and that families understand that that's something that will be really important for them to fill out if indeed they were affected by the pandemic in such a way that they couldn't continue because of technology, et cetera.
Given what the Chancellor's office has said, our admissions and records team made a decision to actually allow students to withdraw from classes without an EW. The class just entirely comes off the transcript. So especially for our CCAP students, and of course we're in very close coordination with the admissions and records unit. So if students are deciding they want to withdraw, and we're really trying as much as possible to support the students and keep them in the classes, but if they do decide they need to do the excused withdrawal, we're just completely taking the class off their transcript. So nothing's showing up there. And our Dean of Admissions and Records decided that he felt that there was enough latitude from the Chancellor's office to do it that way. So there isn't an EW on the transcripts.
Great. Well, thank you both. Thank you both teams, both colleges, for sharing some of the work that you're doing and giving us some insight to support the field. So again, thank you to Foothill and Chaffey College. We're going to go over a few more pieces now before we close up at 11. I just want to let you know, I see a lot more questions. We are constantly doing our best to make sure that we are addressing those within this hour, but also in following webinars. If you are reaching certain concerns, if you're dealing with a different challenge and you'd like us to discuss that topic, please share it with us in the chat, and that'll help us design future webinars to support you in this work. And so speaking of, so next Thursday on April 9th, we will have our next webinar. I hope you all can join us then. If you have the link to this one, you'll probably have the link to the next. And if you have any questions, please do reach out or check out the Career Ladders Project website. If you haven't already, please join our Basecamp community of practice. This is an online platform that allows us to talk with one another, share resources. It's a great way of us to be in virtual communication with one another. So there's a link there to check out a tutorial. We also send out invites, so you'll have to accept that and join us on this virtual community of practice. To give you an idea of what's offered on this site, on the next slide, you'll see that there's a message board. So if you do want to say a little something, share something going on with you at your site, you can put that on the message board. You can see we've got some activity going on already. We also have other platforms available, or sorry, other sources available within Basecamp. Docs and files, this is where we've been putting everything from our webinars. So as I mentioned earlier, we have it here in Basecamp and on our CLP website. But you can find our one-pagers, the videos from past webinars, and so forth. And then lastly, we have a schedule. If you want to know what's going on in the dual enrollment world, you can click on this, you can add to the schedule, and you can also check it out. So with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to all our great speakers. Thanks to those participating in the chat. And I really want to give a big shout out to the CLP team on behind the scenes, moving a mile a minute. And thank you to all of you taking time to engage with all of us, to learn from the field, and to support one another through these new and challenging times. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again next Thursday.